Sit and where, and then we'll start the conversation.
Jerry Barnett, actually kind of former chairman of Remington Colleges, and chairman and founder. We are a group of formerly for-profit career schools. Now we are actually not-for-profit, but we have 20 campuses around primarily the southeast United States, including one here in Little Rock, and about a little over 7,000 students.
Walter Burgess with Power Technology, and we are definitely a for-profit institution. We are a laser manufacturer in Arkansas for 42 years, with the majority of our employees here, and one in California, one in Canada.
I'm Rajesh Okhani, Vice President of Wellspun and the founder of Little Rock facility. We employ about 600 people, and we are into manufacturing of pipes for oil and gas sector.
I'm Mike Douglas. I am the director of UAMS BioVentures, the technology licensing arm of the university. We turn federal research dollars into opportunities for commercialization and facilitate that process.
And I'm Eddie Drilling with AT&T, Arkansas. We provide telecommunication services across Arkansas, and we have about 2,600 employees in the state. And of course, wireline, wireless, video products all across the board from a telecommunications standpoint.
Jerry Jones with Axiom, and when I saw the title of the group being Education, Manufacturing, and Technology, I thought, well, I've got this one covered. I'm also the chairman of the Arkansas Virtual Academy, which is a complete virtual internet-based public school in Arkansas. It may be the only statewide public school district in the state of Arkansas. And on the manufacturing side, a lot of people don't realize, but our company Axiom grew out of a manufacturing business, a school bus manufacturing business in Conway, Arkansas. And it had some excess computers, and they decided to get into the marketing business that grew into a global marketing services business.
I'm Kelly Lyon. I'm the director of the Center of Community and Economic Development at the University of Central Arkansas. And UCA is home to a training institute for community development that has been there for 25 years. It was actually a public-private partnership founded with then AP&L and Southwestern Bell, and now Entergy and AT&T. And we train community leaders from across the state and region. And it was the first of its kind in the nation, and now there's one in Texas, Idaho, Illinois, and West Virginia, but we're happy to say we're the flagship and the innovator.
Good afternoon, my name is Paul Revere with Caterpillar. I'm the general manager of the North Little Rock facility. We produce motor graders here. Caterpillar is world-renowned for their construction equipment and also their power generation. And I just want to say thank you to the Congressman for inviting me here. We're humbled and appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
I'm Eric Sandgren. I'm the Dean of Engineering and Information Technology at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. And we essentially have all the main engineering programs, as well as computer science and information technology for the region.
I'm Mary Ann Shope. I'm the Vice President for Economic Development at Pulaski Technical College. Celebrating tomorrow our 20th year as a community college. It's had its long roots in Little Rock. 1945, I think, is when the school got started. But now we're the fourth largest institution of higher ed in Arkansas, and the largest community college with 12,000 credit students and 10,000 non-credit students.
Thank you so much. I want to start out the discussion, if I can, with exploring a little bit the relationship between Caterpillar and Pulaski Tech and how that came about. Could y'all speak to how y'all started working together, how that has benefited you, and then maybe if there are other examples on the panel of how educational institutions here are working closely with the private sector. I would love to hear more about that. Then I want to sort of talk about the STEM issue in terms of STEM graduates, the shortage, some of the things that we can do to address that, and some legislation that I'm working on in that area. So if you want to.
Sure, I'll let Mary Ann go ahead and just kind of elaborate on how the relationship got started, and then I'll follow up, as well as the relationship that we're currently developing with the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. So, Marion, go ahead.
Well, Congressman, first of all, I want to tell you that if this were a Caterpillar meeting, the first thing they would say is, this is where you go in case of a tornado. They'd point out where all the fire extinguishers are. They would show you all the exits in the building, and they'd make us all look around in case there were things we were going to trip over. Because safety, they told me I had to start every Caterpillar meeting with all those safety things. So I've learned.
Thank you.
We had that briefing. We had that briefing this morning. I'm sorry.
Long before anyone knew that Caterpillar was the company interested in possibly coming to Arkansas, our college president and our advancement group were asked to submit a lot of information to this company, and it had a name, and I can't remember, a secret code name, about the kinds of programs we had at Pulaski Tech, the credit and non-credit programs, and our track record with working with business and industry in the area. Caterpillar was just gathering lots and lots of information to determine where it was going to make its national headquarters for motor graders in North America. And we were fortunate that North Little Rock apparently, and along with the Arkansas Economic Development Commission, put together a really good package that not only did they know that Central Arkansas was a great place to live, but I think it was a good package for them to come economically as well. After that decision was made by Caterpillar to move to Central Arkansas, we were called together. There was a team of us, AEDC, Pulaski Tech, and Caterpillar people, to begin talking about the immediate and long-term needs that Caterpillar had. The immediate needs were the ramp-up. They had huge employment needs for when they opened the facility. Not only were they reconfiguring the old video facility on the river, but they were also going to have to hire hundreds of employees. And so we worked with them on how to design a pre-employment training package that would fit into the current existing Caterpillar culture and the Caterpillar pre-employment way of training. And once we developed what that process would look like, then we just became, I think, an arm of Caterpillar in terms of providing a location for people who are interested in being employed at Caterpillar to come to our training facility over on East Roosevelt Road across from the airport, to take the pre-employment training, to sit for the pre-employment tests that Caterpillar take. They also came there for the interviews. Again, Caterpillar really didn't have a home. It was working on its home on the river. So Pulaski Tech in the early days was the home of Caterpillar.
Great. I think how we've transitioned, thanks for that, Mary Ann. Moving forward today, we had a lot of conversation I heard earlier in the infrastructure. And so that was obviously a big draw to Caterpillar here, but a portion of that big draw is also the human capital that we look for. And part of that human capital is the great workforce that Arkansas can deliver for us and we're utilizing today, but it also has to do with the education facilities that are here. And Pulaski Tech is obviously one of those that we've partnered with and are working with, and University of Arkansas Little Rock is another one that we are continuing to, just starting a relationship, but moving forward with that very rapidly. One of the things, I can't remember the gentleman's name from the prior meeting, he suggested there was a problem with hiring good qualified welders. And part of that is in the technical colleges and schools that we have, such as Pulaski, we've hired quite a few folks that have graduated with certificate programs from that facility in our weld program. So that's been a great help to us. It's good for us to go back and look to them to help develop the folks that we need to supply the jobs. We have job openings. Now it's up to us to get the qualified candidates in there. We've had a great deal of success with Pulaski on that. Moving forward from that, not only do we need the production workers and those folks, but we're a highly technical company. We design processes, we also design our products, and partnering with University of Arkansas Little Rock, really from a manufacturing engineering perspective, we've had a great relationship that started with Eric and his team, and we've currently have a couple of folks full-time that we've hired out of the School of Engineering doing great work for us, and we're looking forward. We actually have 6 interns that are going through the process now, so we're building that relationship. It's one thing to have a great place to work, great incentives from the state, done a wonderful job there, but we have to have qualified candidates to help fill these jobs. And it's just too expensive to transplant folks from other facilities to do this type of work. So we're happy to have a couple institutions like we have here on my left to help us with that.
And I would like to add on
Sure.
that with Paul, is with our experience when we started our pipe manufacturing facility, that, and the whole perspective with which you are taking ahead this job conference, is that we have to go a step backward a little bit over here. Here we are talking about giving the training and imparting the training to the people who are like quite matured, and they have passed that phase where they could have made a right decision for their career. And I think we have to escalate, I mean, we have to bring it down to the high school level where, like, you know, where we explain the presence of the engineering need in the state, in the city, and where the student can take a decision for his career. Right now, we are trying to see that, okay, this is our need of Caterpillar, this is a need of Wellspun. Based on that, how we can, you know, induce people or motivate people to get into that engineering training program. But I think if we take a step back and start right from the high school level, and then try to, you know, show them that career opportunities, that if you see the ratio of the people, like, so the percentage of the people who drop out from the high school is so very high, because I don't know the major reason behind it, but perhaps if we show them that kind of an opportunity available in the city, in the state itself, I think that will help a lot to bring out, like, you know, the brilliant people and the talent out of, and add more to the workforce of Little Rock.
Let me mention a few things along that lines. I was just handed an article, U.S. manufacturers looking for 600,000 skilled workers, survey says. American manufacturing companies cannot fill up to 600,000 skilled positions, even as unemployment numbers hover at historic levels. That is consistent with what Patrick Schick said on the earlier panel. He said he cannot get the people he needs to work at his company. I would also mention that along the lines that you're talking about, the STEM disciplines, there are a number of STEM high schools here in Central Arkansas that are sprouting up. And I don't know, Kelly, if you want to talk a little bit about the STEM dorm that you've got going on. I got to tour at UCA where they're capturing freshmen, and you want to talk about that a little bit?
We started the STEM residential college last year, and it was met with a great deal of success, because if you think about a large university, some students felt like they were getting lost in a larger environment and wanted a sense of community, and also wanted to focus on the STEM disciplines. So we combined the two essentially and created a residential college where a select group of students live in a cohort model. They take their classes together, they get to know their professors, and we also bring in a number of private sector representatives to talk about you know, not just the academic, but how to apply this in a real world setting. And what we found is it met with such success that the students really drove the request to have more, because they're freshmen and they said, okay, now what do we do? So we're bringing online in the fall the EPIC residential college as a follow-up to the STEM residential college. I think most people are familiar with the STEM disciplines, but EPIC is an opportunity to take entrepreneurship, innovation, public scholarship, and community engagement and build on those STEM disciplines with some soft skills, with some leadership development, and try to both increase the quantity of graduates in the state, but the quality. And the students that are the workforce of tomorrow, they come into higher education with the expectation that they are going to have an applied experience, that they're going to be able to apply what they're learning in the classroom, and if they don't have that opportunity, they'll either create it or vote with their feet. And they also come with the expectation that they will give back and engage with their community. So I think that's a promising trend long term, that, you know, the next generation is coming to us with the expectation to engage for the benefit of the state.
Jerry and Eddie, are y'all having any problems finding the people you need for more technical positions? Is that a challenge that y'all have, and maybe writ large on a national basis?
Well, I mean, it's always a challenge. I think, you know, depending on the level of job that we're looking for, You know, one emphasis we've got in our company is a real job shadowing program where we're trying to take kids that are still in high school and trying to make sure they understand the importance of staying in high school and getting a degree, getting a high school diploma, because that's the first step before they can do anything else, whether it's, you know, 2-year.
Basic requirements are
Yeah, I mean,
hard to.
because some of the training we can do ourselves if they at least have some basic skills like that. So, you know, it's a huge problem in Arkansas when you look at a 30% non-graduation rate, you know, from the kids in our high school. So that's step one.
And those may or may not be people who you need for STEM disciplines. They're just.
But they've got to do that before they can do
sure,
anything.
Sure.
You know, and I think when you look at the next level of jobs that we're going to be requiring people to do, whether it's manufacturing or any number of jobs, they're all going to have some technical skills. It may not be what we think of as STEM, you know, like an engineering degree, but they're all going to have basic technical skills in order to fill these jobs that are going to be here in the future. One thing I would like to point out too, and compliment Pulaski Tech and the other 2-year institutions in the state, is how flexible they are in trying to put together certification programs like they have for Caterpillar and other companies. When you've got a need, and it may be something that's new, but they'll put together a program specifically to address that. And one example for us is, you know, we've got so much of our growth now is in our wireless network technology and what we're trying to deploy, and it's going to be even more growth and more exponential growth in that area. And there really is a shortage of people that we hire, our contractors hire, and our subcontractors hire, that really know how to deploy cellular technology. And they may be a very bright technical person, but one day they're building homes, and the next day they're out on a cell tower, you know, or they're trying to work in that field. And so we're right now, as an example, trying to put together a program to help train more people to learn how to handle that kind of technology. And it changes, you know, it changes almost monthly how you do it. But we're just another example of how they're able to help us, you know, with those kind of needs.
Anybody else?
You know, one of the true secrets to the success of Axiom have been the people of the state of Arkansas. It's our home. It's where this company got started in 1969. And what we have found is that when you match up the work ethic of people from Arkansas with good technical skills, it's a really good formula for success. And it has given us a real significant competitive advantage vis-a-vis some of our competitors that are located on the coast. We have been the beneficiary of very good colleges of engineering in Arkansas. There have been years when we've been proud to hire the top 10 graduates of the College of Engineering at the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville. We're working very closely with UALR now. We're announcing something with UCA this afternoon.
You want to announce it now? I'm
Well,
kidding.
I'm not going to preempt my boss too often. But we have found a willingness in the educational environment in Arkansas to work with us to help design curriculum that are very well designed and to meet our needs. We have also found, however, that it's not just the technical skills that lead to success in our company. That we find that, you know, if you don't renew yourself every 3 years in technology, you're obsolete. And so being able to find people who love to learn is a real key to success in our company. And what that means is that we're not just hiring engineers. We hire a lot of people with a broader arts and science background, and they tend to do quite well. Now, we may have to spend more time helping them understand technology and learn that, but so long as they have the desire and the capacity to learn, it works out pretty well.
Yes, sir.
Just to follow up on the Axiom, I mean, the interaction between universities and industry isn't just at, you know, the entry-level workforce. I mean, with Axiom, we actually created at UALR an information quality program, which kind of gets at the point where to make decisions we have to deal with information, and we don't know how good that information is. And so that allowed us to create a discipline-specific program that not only supported the local industry, but is a very unique program nationally. So not only does it support existing industry, it's creating a workforce that will lead us to new industry. So I think, this state is really, I guess, regionally focused or even state focused between education and the industrial community. I think that's a really positive thing that goes on in this state.
That was raised in the last panel. I think we take this for granted sometimes, but a lot of times the schools, community colleges, technical colleges, what have you, they just offer classes, and that's what they offer. But there seems to be, there has been a lot of customization, interacting with the employer or potential employer, and finding out what specifically was needed, and then there seems to be a lot of flexibility and willingness to adapt to what the employers need, and it sounds like what's going on here.
So I can say as part of the laser and photonics community in Arkansas that we're glad to hear about that. Yesterday, Ed Franklin was presented with an opportunity to be flexible and put in place a academic program that would support the photonics community, which is about $77 million economic impact for Arkansas. That's pretty much under the radar because none of the customers are here. But I would echo on some of the earlier comments that it is difficult to find STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math employees here in the state. In some of my key positions like optical sciences, I've had to go as far away as Canada and most recently as far away as Reno, Nevada to find that person. And as you can imagine, an optical sciences company without an optical scientist is a stagnant employer. So it's a very key position for us, and we do have 2 programs in the state that haven't yet, but could produce the next qualified employee for us.
What educational level would that be? Would that be a master's? Would that be a
The current gentleman is a PhD.
PhD?
Regrettably, he
Wow.
was educated in China instead of here on shore, but there are centers of excellence for optical sciences in Florida and other states, and maybe in the future Arkansas could join that.
Congressman, before we took our seats here earlier, we were talking about the fact that there are a lot of high school students that for whatever reason opt out of science, the harder sciences and maths, when they're 14 or 15 years old, and they have no idea of the fact that they're choosing at that moment, or making choices, or eliminating, I guess, career choices at that moment, and they don't even really know it. Because many of the jobs that are there and will be and are mission critical to the businesses and industries of this country require heavy math and science. And I do want to speak to that. At the Southern Growth Policies Board meeting in Jackson a couple of weeks ago, they talked about what we mentioned here, that about 52% of the businesses now currently have openings, but there just aren't people with the skill sets, and in particular a lot of the math pieces and some of the technical things to fill them. And that's a real interest to us at the community college, because what we don't want to do is graduate people for whom there are jobs. But one of the interesting statistics that I thought, and I've kind of looked at that, is kind of this shape, is they identified higher skills, middle skills, and lower skills jobs. And they said that in terms of looking at people in the workplace, about 25% of the people in the workplace were there for higher skills jobs, or about 30%. About 40% were there for middle skills jobs, and another 30% for lower skills jobs. And so that kind of creates this little bulge in the middle of the line. But when they actually looked at what jobs were in the marketplace currently, there were only 25% of the jobs that were higher skills jobs. So you've got about 5% of the people who are not going to be able to find a higher skills job. Then they've got this, it's not a little bulge anymore, it's a huge piece, but 50% of the workplace is looking for those middle skills jobs, those technicians, those CNC operators, the people that Eddie was talking about. And then you kind of go back in again to 25% are at the lower skills. So when you and your colleagues talk about job creation, for those of us at the community college, we want to know, are they going to be high skills jobs, middle skills jobs, or low skills jobs? Because right now, it's the middle skills jobs where Wellspun
Yes,
needs them, where Philip Shack needs them, where I can name several companies that call us all the time and say, we're advertising like crazy for CNC operators and we can't find them. Or we need maintenance mechanics, but we can't find them. So yes, we need job creation, but we also need the public to understand that there are good jobs out there. And I think as we move forward with job creation in this country and this huge focus, that could be a subset of one of the messages is that there are jobs out there. We brought 40 counselors in from the Little Rock School District to discuss jobs in manufacturing. And what we discovered was that they thought that jobs were divided into two categories, your really high skill jobs or your low skill jobs. And they had no idea that there was this 50% in the middle, nor did they even know what those jobs were. So I think that's a huge piece of education. And another suggestion that we've worked on, but we really haven't focused on in Central Arkansas is I do think we need to get our industry sectors together and have Paul and Wellspun and L'Oreal and Kimberly-Clark and Dassault and Hawker and all of those folks come together as an industry sector and say, this is what we need. We need these high-level jobs, we need these mid-level jobs, and let's make sure that we match this with what we've got going on in our educational institutions, our private career colleges. But we don't have that. Now, we have individual people speaking, but we don't have a group. And I do think we
Marian,
need a
that is
group voice.
exactly the reason I was trying to say that we have to step back and start
Exactly.
educating our children right from the high school, letting them know about the opportunities available, because we are exactly having the same problem that where you have three bands of people. The top is the highly skilled, the middle one, which is the largest one, is the semi-skilled, and then the unskilled people. And apart from that, that leads to the work ethics as well. If the people have not done their basic education, as Ed was explaining that, if they don't do that basic education, it's very difficult for them to grasp the work ethic. Today they made money for about a month's time. Till that is over, they don't want to come back to work. And that costs them a job. And that's where we are struggling today, like with respect to that middle band of the people. Wherein, like I said, today also out of 600 people, we have almost 20% which are out of Arkansas, maybe from out of the country. And we have, like, say, we want to rotate the people, but we are not able to do the rotation because of just that particular skill is not available in the market. And our people are, like, say, stuck over here who can go and, like, say, enhance our footprints across the globe. But we can't just replace them overnight till we have the people of that right skill. And the work ethic is the very big thing, again, which is like we are experiencing pretty bad on that front, where people are not realizing that how it can cost them the job if they don't follow the proper work ethics. And we still have in hourlies, we still have about 25-30% turnover just because of work ethic problem.
I would submit a different age group that we should be engaging, the young people. The 7th and 8th grade is really about the level that we need to engage these people. And by we, I mean corporations. I would challenge the corporations to get into the schools at that level with the science teachers, with the career orientation folks. I can tell you that even 6th graders delight when they get to see a laser or handle a laser, of course a safe one. So no lightsabers, Tim. So I would challenge the corporations here. Let's get out there in the 7th or 8th grade level. Let's show them the science is here, the math is here, the technology, and the skills that come from that. The one thing that they don't understand is what those manufacturing jobs mean to them. The average non-manufacturing wage in Arkansas is $63,000. The average manufacturing wage in Arkansas is $74,447. So it's $11,000 improvement in their living right there a year. So they don't understand that at their young age, and it's up to us to educate them.
I'd like to follow up on that. I look at things from the perspective of communities and what are community leaders trying to do, not only economically, but for quality of life. And we have a lot of leaders that talk to us about the population shifts and losing students that never come back to Arkansas communities, primarily rural communities. And they've asked us, how do we engage that generation? And anecdotally, we think if you wait until they're in high school or in college, they're already gone. And if you do engage them at a much younger age to where they do see some opportunity, they do see a reason to feel invested in their community and their state, then we have a chance of attracting and retaining, this next generation. But I would concur and say the younger, the better.
I want to ask, there were a couple of people on the previous panel. I think two people mentioned that their concern over our public policy vis-a-vis unemployment benefits. And the argument they made was that they can pay a little more than the benefits, but not a ton more. And they have found that it is enough to, that the benefits are enough to keep them from taking certain jobs. Do y'all have any opinion or experience in terms of hiring with that sort of situation? Had two folks on the last panel mention that.
I think there are a couple things that we might want to take into consideration on that. And one of the things is to focus on the interplay between the federal minimum wage law and unemployment. And there are a lot of industries that we could get going in the Delta and the mountains of Arkansas, but for the federal minimum wage law. Now, if there were a way to, in essence, shift the unemployment payment from the individual to a business when they hire someone who is currently getting unemployment benefits, so that business only pays the delta for a period of time, I think that is something very specific that the Congress and various states can take a look at as a way to get employment going again and potentially bring back certain jobs to this country that frankly we're outsourcing to other countries.
That's an interesting idea.
I don't see any reason why we don't go in that
Sort of a
direction.
subsidy
Absolutely.
in the amount of the delta, which that job with that subsidy would be better than paying the person to not work.
Exactly, because you get more money circulating in the Arkansas economy or in the American economy, and we get all the benefits from that.
Of
Plus,
manufacturing or
people
whatever.
get back to work, which is it's a good. It tends to keep families together. It increases self-esteem. There are just so many good things that come from the value of work. And let's take a problem and turn it into an opportunity.
Could it even, would you see some sort of sunset on that potentially, or, this is,
Well, sure, of course.
Yeah.
But let's give everybody the right incentive to get going in the right and in the good direction. And maybe you sunset it after that person has been employed by the business for 12 months or 18 months or 24 months. I don't know. I don't know exactly. Haven't thought it all the way through, but going in that direction, I think, would be a good direction.
That's an interesting idea. I haven't heard that before. That's something that I'd like to get with you and talk through in detail later on. That is a very interesting concept. Anybody else got anything they want to add on the unemployment situation? I want to raise this and just get you. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
There's one other thing that I'd like to throw out in terms of unemployment. And I've talked to some of the folks that are on this panel about this. This summer I got very frustrated by what was occurring in our country. We just didn't seem to be getting along. It didn't seem like we were moving things forward. And maybe we didn't need to move some things forward, but there were a whole lot of things that we needed to move forward. And I realized that, we've got 9.1% unemployment as a published rate. We all know that it's in the mid-teens for the folks that have given up and have permanently taken themselves out of the workplace. So what can we do? Well, we in business can wait on government to do something, or we in business can get together and do something. And so some of us started this organization called You Hire US, and it's pretty simple. It's an effort to try to get 1 million American businesses to just hire one unemployed person sometime in the next 90 days. And, it was criticized by some, but, it's possible. It gives business an opportunity to come together. It gives business an opportunity to participate in moving forward. It gives American business to step up to the leadership plate yet again, which American business has done time and time again in the history of this country. And it just might help jumpstart or kickstart the economy and change all this gloom and doom to something more positive. And if we collectively in business believe that next month is going to be better than last month, guess what? We start investing. We hire more people. Wages go up. Demand for our goods and products and services goes up. And it's a suggestion. There's no mandate to do this. But if you look at what we have all been doing in business for the past 4, 5, 6 years, it made perfectly good sense for the individual firm to cut employment. But you cannot cut your way to prosperity. You can cut your way to survival for a while, but you can't cut your way to prosperity. So to get things going, we've kind of got to reverse this strategy. And if one firm does this, nobody benefits. If 100 firms benefit or do it, 100 individuals will benefit. But if we can get a lot of businesses in this country to do this, then we can advance the war against the recession. And as far as I'm concerned, we are at war with the recession, and we need to get real serious about doing some things to lift the country out of it.
I think, it's hard to argue with encouraging people to hire somebody. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And certainly would support anybody hiring the additional people. I saw some stuff on this, and I know that the Clinton Global Initiative has been involved with this. I guess my biggest concern is we don't have, in my view, uncertainty just for the heck of it. We have uncertainty because there are the patient has symptoms that reflect really bad health problems. And, I think that until we do the surgery, provide the medication, and deal with those serious problems, particularly our debt and the things driving the debt, as well as our uncompetitive tax policy, our regulatory burden, and lots of other stuff, rising healthcare costs. Until we address those, we can certainly do these other things, and I'm all for them. But I'm afraid that we've got to deal with those other things for the longer term. And I think that in large part is why things like the stimulus, $1 trillion, came and went. It worked while it was there a little bit at a very, very, very high cost. But in the end, it didn't reduce the debt. It didn't change our tax code. It didn't change our regulatory structure. And welcome anybody's comments on that. But I do want to throw this out. I'm working on a bill, a STEM education bill, that I would really like to get y'all's input on. I've talked with the folks at UALR about this. This, again, is one of these things that I think is good. It's not going to change. It's not going to change everything. It's not going to get us back on track as a country. But it is a good piece that we need to pursue, like your deal, and we certainly need to pursue those, even when we're not dealing with the bigger, bolder things. And this proposal I'm working on is not finalized yet. I'm on the Judiciary Committee, and I'm working, and immigration comes under the Judiciary Committee, and so I'm working with the chairman, Lamar Smith, on a bill that he will like, because I don't want to just introduce a bill like 99% of bills that are introduced. I want to introduce one that might go somewhere. That's a novel idea. So I'm trying to get the chairman, who controls the committee, to work with me on it, so that we have an increased chance of success. And here's the basic premise. The basic premise is that we have a shortage of STEM graduates in this country. I don't think anybody can dispute that. If you can, I'd love to hear it. But we have a shortage of STEM grads, both at the PhD and the master's level. what this bill would do is it would say, if you are if you are a STEM graduate from a certified school in the United States, you meet the requirements to make sure someone's not gaming the system. If you get that degree, that engineering degree, at the PhD level from UALR, or there's some debate of whether we can open it up to the master's level as well, and I have one that has advocated for that. There's some folks that are important to its passage who are fighting for the PhD only. But in any event, what it would do is it'd say, if you're a foreign student and you come to the United States and you go to UALR and you get your PhD and you're now equipped, we want to keep you because we don't have enough of you. And we don't want you, we're not going to encourage any kind of illegal immigration. What we want to say to you is, if you can find that job that needs you because we don't have enough of you here, then we will put you on the fast track for permanent residence. And we will take, there's something called the diversity lottery that has excess. Some people would like to completely convert the diversity lottery to something else, but there are slots, if you will, available in that pool of immigration, that immigration pool, and we reach from there and get you what you need to be here. Why? Well, we're short of these people. We're training them. We're letting them in, giving them all the immigration status they need to take our knowledge and our training and our expertise. And then we're saying, glad you came, see you later, take your talents back and compete with us. Now, I don't care how you slice it, it doesn't make sense to me. And we talked about this. UALR actually is, they're in the trenches on this, and so the details aren't finalized. But this is something that I have found broad bipartisan, Democrat and Republican and otherwise, support for in industry and educational sectors. I welcome y'all's thoughts on this.
I will echo your thought, Congressman, and I don't know somehow how it's a telepathy or something, I don't know, but this has been a heartburn issue at Wellspun right from day one. And I would like to add one more thing to it, what you just now spoke about is that today job creation, we all know that if you enhance the manufacturing in the country, in the state, job will automatically follow that particular growth. And today, like creating that kind of a talent, training that kind of a talent from the educational field is one aspect of it. Secondly, I cannot explain, the second piece which I want to add is that I cannot explain what hardship we have gone through to bring in the talent from, like our trained talent from Wellspun out of United States, bring them over here and train the folks over here, absolutely on-job training, exposing $150 million worth of facility and equipments at their exposure, who has never seen pipes, who has never seen how the pipe is being formed. We brought those talent and we know how much hardship we have gone through. So this immigration is very, very critical, that where if we are taking that challenge and taking that risk of making a multi-million-dollar investment into the state, into the country, the immigration authorities has to understand that our intention is not to migrate people from one part of the world to this country and make them establish over here and migrate with the families. Our objective is to bring them in, train the folks over here, which is 600 people. If we import 50 people and they can train 600 people, you are putting 600 families, you're feeding 600 families by that. That's what is ignored. And as you rightly said, we hired 40 people of that nature who came over here for their masters, and we said, no, you're not going back. We'll hire you over here. We'll give you a job over here and retain your talent and train our people over here.
And
that's
love
what
Little Rock.
Absolutely.
And
they are today all Arky, and they are like enjoying Little Rock and better than any other place. They are coming from all across the country. Somebody's coming from Syracuse, somebody's coming from, UNC, and we hired them all over here, and they are happy, and I echo that thought, and it should definitely be pushed forward. But I would say that we should add another piece to it, that if there are corporates who want to bring the manufacturing back into the country, into the state, they should be looked from a leniency and rather than, keeping them at par with other people who wants to migrate, to settle down over here for their own interest. When the corporates are into the middle of it and not an individual, and when you want to bring in those talent to train other people, they should be allowed to do that. Then only you would be seeing, like, I remember that when China was coming up as a big player in the global economy, they hired 2,000 English teachers in Beijing to teach all their folks English. They did not have any strict immigration policy, or they did not hire them to settle them over there, but still there are so many people who have made China as their home and importing that English language. So, I mean, why can't it be looked at in the same fashion? Why US cannot look in the same fashion and try to open up the doors for the people who are investing? I would say that, let it be stringent for individual who are looking only their individual benefit. Let it be stringent, make it more stringent, I don't care. But as far as a corporate is concerned, if somebody is putting in so much stake of multi-million dollars, that should be looked from the lenient, policy.
And the point that I'm sorry, let me just mention this, the point that I often remind people is we're talking about legal immigration, number one.
Yep.
And number two, these are jobs that we can't fill. And there are a lot of companies that may not stay if they can't fill their critical positions. This helps companies that want to stay in the United States, helps them stay because it provides them with the slots that they need and to fill. So go ahead, Eddie.
Well, I just was going to just add to that, and I agree with you. I think it's a great idea and something that's really a critical solution, because we're looking at this right now sort of as a static problem. But when you look 15 years out at if you give the rate that we're looking at now in terms of what we're graduating, who's going to get a technical degree, there are going to be 25 million more jobs in the United States that require a technical degree than we're going to have people with technical degrees to fill. So we're not going to win this race. I mean, we're going to have to get this talent from other places or those jobs are going to go to those other places. If we don't have those people here, the jobs are going to go somewhere else.
Well, these are people that we're training.
Right.
Michael or anybody? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, our research infrastructure, at the corporate level has depended on foreign-born graduate talent for 50 or 70 years. I think the difference today is that we see while 40 years ago, the students from India and China, if they wanted to stay involved in the cutting-edge research, they had to stay here. So we had a captured market anyway. But now we're seeing more and more of them are going back to China, going back to India, because they built their own infrastructure now. So if we don't do something to alter that, we're going to be in trouble. So it's really not a new trend as far as foreign-born PhDs. It's just now we have trouble attracting them to the country. So, I mean, that's one problem. The other problem, which we've kind of already talked about, is getting more U.S.-born people interested in that. And that gets back to the 6th, 7th grade thing and a lot of issues. But, we got to attack this on both fronts.
Yeah, I was going to say, to fill the void, you're going to have to attack it both on the domestic side and in terms of the people who are coming here, getting our education. We have to attack it from both ends and maybe meet in the middle somewhere.
I think there's one more pool there within, or one more lottery within immigration that needs to be addressed. We do have a current quota for individuals of exceptional talent, where we can pull cream of the crop researchers, technologists from other countries. And right now that pool, I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's a pitifully small number compared to the benefit that pool, talent pool, could bring into the United States. Also, the pool of people who are willing to start businesses. Immigration Service will grant you legal immigration if you're going to invest in the United States. We hit that quota probably quite often. It may be another quota that would allow us to grow our economy if we could increase that quota.
I think there were a couple of reports this year to speak to this too. One of them was, I think in Forbes, talking about the cities that draw brains, they call them the brain magnets. And it appears that people who are really talented, like we're talking about, are not as interested in going to the East and West Coast anymore, that they're really looking at southern cities, the Charlottes, the Charlestons, the New Orleans, even Oklahoma City and Tulsa. And the other one, to speak to your entrepreneurship, also said that the cities that tend to draw more successful entrepreneurs tend to be southern cities as well. So I think we've got those things going for us. And to your other point, I was in a meeting with Governor Barber from Mississippi, who said he thought that every talented international grad from our colleges and universities, or at least those in Mississippi, should have a green card stapled to their diploma when they graduated.
If you allow me, I would like to switch gears over here from education. Obviously, manpower is a very important cost element, but if we talk about creating, like say, the jobs in the state, in the city, it is very, very important. The one thing which we are lacking is the federal recognition. And this is my own personal experience, because I was the first one to hunt for the location and bring in this project in Little Rock. And that's what, like, you know, the thing which I was missing in the whole, you know, checklist. What I was having is the federal recognition to enhance or to induce the manufacturers and the job and the businessmen to come in and, you know, put in the manufacturing facility. Like state has a very good package, a very competitive package, like say to attract businesses. But as far as the federal is concerned, I think we need to take up that issue. I read the Job Act by the president, and there is still not enough, you know, to induce, like say, the manufacturing which has gone outside the country to bring them back in. And that is where something like we need to look upon. Maybe it is a corporate tax, maybe it is like more benefits, just by giving the depreciation and talking about that. It's just a deferred tax policy, which is not very attractive. But I think if we want to really enhance the businesses and bring in the manufacturing back to the country, it is very, very important that this issue is taken up at the federal level, which I believe the President is working on, but still it is not enough as far as the recognition to, and in compared to the state package, what state offers, I think that needs to escalate up to the federal level so that, you know, you can induce and attract more businesses.
Let me, since you raised a corporate tax, let me go down that road for a second and just see what, I've brought this up with every panel so far, because it is, it's relevant to pretty much every industry. We've heard a lot of talk about fundamental tax reform, and that includes both on the individual side and the corporate side. And I assume that y'all pay a corporate tax, and you pay C Corp and you pay corporate tax. Okay, well, I know you guys pay corporate tax. In that context, what we have is the highest statutory rate in the world. We were second until Japan changed theirs. And I read yesterday that in the past 4 years, 75 countries have lowered their corporate tax rate. They're doing that to be competitive. For a long time, we didn't need to be competitive to a certain extent, because we had such great structural advantages over the rest of the world. That has changed. And from President Clinton to the Bipartisan Debt Commission to the budget that we passed in the spring, there are a lot of voices out there who are calling for some sort of corporate tax reform. And what we end up having, what we have right now, as you know, is an effective rate that's all over the map. So it's statutory at 35. One corporation may pay nothing. One corporation may pay 35, and the other corporations may pay somewhere in between. That may change every year. You may pay 35 one year, 28 the next year, 20 the next year, depending on the deductions that you take and what have you. So we have a high rate. We have a complicated system with lots of different deductions, exemptions, credits, and what have you. Some of them are helpful for research, some of these credits, and some people count on accelerate.
But on that, the Congress has not done a very good job of giving certainty because it comes up for a vote every 2 years
Oh,
as to
yeah.
whether or not the R&D tax credit is going to be extended.
Yep, and I heard the same from biodiesel today and also from wind power.
I think R&D tax credit is one of those areas that we are missing.
Mhm.
If we look just across our border to the north, there's some territories within Canada where the R&D tax credit is 70, 80%. It's hard to compete.
Mm.
So we do need to look at that if we're going to continue
Yeah.
with the current system. The R&D tax credit is a stimulating event on a local economy.
I'd like to jump in too.
Yeah.
I'd like to add to that. Caterpillar spends a large amount on R&D, $1.9 billion last year. We'll spend over $2 billion this year in R&D. So I think that's one portion of the tax code that could help us out. But really, there's a four-pronged approach there. One is the tax credits on the intellectual property. First one is that lower tax rate you talked about, Congressman, having a nice level, lower rate so that we can be competitive in the world. We are in a global economy. If you look at Caterpillar, we have $15 billion that we export out of U.S.-based facilities, mine being one of them. Our factory here in North Little Rock, 45% of all the motor graders that I produce are going to get shipped around the world. So that's a great thing. That ties into free trade, and maybe we'll get into that a little later. Two of the things I wanted to talk about were the tax rate today. So you got me going there. And then the second thing was also the free trade agreements that I'd like to touch on later if we have time. But second is that territorial tax system. You know, when we have facilities in China, we produce goods in China. I ship tractors to China today, and what happens is they have a 25% flat rate. So they'll charge us 25% tax on that. If I want to bring that money back to the United States for investment, and say my tax rate is at a 35%, the government says, you know what, you're going to now have to pay an extra 10% on top of the 25% that my competitors like John Deere, Komatsu, and some of these other folks don't have to pay. So, especially in the foreign companies. So when I'm competing against Volvo and I'm competing against Komatsu, they don't have to play in those rules. So I think that's a key for us. And then the fourth portion of this is we need to build our tax structure so that it supports manufacturing in the United States. The way that we're going to be competitive in the marketplace is not with low-wage jobs. It's with technology. When you walk through my facility, we've invested $150 million just down the road here, and most of that is with technology. We have $1 million CNC systems, we have robotic systems, assembly lines. A lot of investment has gone into that technology. That's what's going to make us competitive against Brazil and Mexico and China. So that investment is key, and we need the tax structure of our government to support that investment back in the United States from our foreign facilities.
While we're on this tax issue, before we move on to other stuff, let's spend a little time here. So I will tell you, and I welcome comments from anybody on this, there are a lot of us who are very aware of the problem with the inability to repatriate overseas profits. And a lot of people say, well, if you change the law on that, you're encouraging jobs to go overseas. I say, well, in case you haven't noticed, that's why they're going. That's why a lot of jobs are going overseas for that and many other reasons. And so one of the proposals that's been thrown out there on the repatriation of overseas profits is one whereby you could bring the overseas profits back, and, well, short-term and long-term. The short-term fix would be you've got $1 trillion or $2 trillion sitting overseas combined, not Caterpillar, although that would be great. and you can bring it back with just a 5% or some very low minimal charge. That has been floated around. So the government gets something because, you know, they got to get something. And then, and then going forward, that's sort of a temporary holiday, if you will. Then going forward, we go to a territorial taxation system, more like Germany or whatever, who has a competitive advantage on us in that area. So that is part of the conversation. That's part of fundamental tax reform to me when you talk about the business side. But also, can you tell us what your effective corporate tax rate was last year, or has been, or?
Again, you're talking to the manufacturing guy
Yeah.
here in Arkansas, so I
Yeah.
really am not the tax
Yeah.
expert on that. But I can tell you what some of the other folks said, it varies from year to year.
Yeah, yeah.
So in order to be able to do that,
You
it
can't
really-
plan.
It depends.
Yeah.
So it's tough to plan. So I like what you said about having that stable, flat tax rate. But to your, I like the point you're talking about repatriation of the money back into the United States. The flat fee that you're talking about is still a discouragement, no matter how nominal, 5% or whatever that is, in my mind, allow us to bring back that money into the country to invest here. And the value that we get out of that is the tax dollars from all the jobs that we create by starting up facilities like North Little Rock. We were scheduled to have about 250, 300 folks here at this facility. We're over 500 folks now. We're gonna hire another 300 folks over the next couple of years. So and a large portion of that is overseas. We're shipping these machines all over the world. And in order for us to do that, we also have to have other facilities around the world. When Caterpillar about 50 years ago decided to go on the offense and say, let's not allow our competitors to own their own home market. So we invested in facilities in Japan to compete with Komatsu. We invested in facilities 57 years ago coming up, we invested in Brazil. Those facilities are paying huge dividends. And you say, well, those jobs are now in those countries. However, we ship product from Mossville, Illinois, down to Brazil. We ship product from all over the United States into those other facilities that also produce equipment to be sold in the rest of the world. So I would ask that those dollars that we produce in those facilities overseas, if we can bring that back with no penalty, would be ideal.
So skip the temporary holiday, go to a territorial taxation
Yes, sir.
system, and just apply it outright and
Yes.
say, gotcha. I know that I've talked with folks at Axiom about this, about the overseas stuff and taxation, and I know that I've heard some similar sentiments from some of the folks there. Do you have? Does anybody have anything further on that?
We are the new company over here, right? Opened in 2009 with all the accelerated and bonus depreciation and everything. We shouldn't be landing up paying anything for another 2 years. We had been paying $15 million as a tax every year in first 2 years of operation after taking all the bonus depreciation and accelerated
Do
depreciation.
you know what that effective rate
It's
is?
about 35% is a federal and 3.5% thanks to Governor Beebe, who extended some incentive on that. So I'm paying only 3.5% on the state income tax. So it's all cumulatively becomes about 36, 37%.
One thing that we all have to take into consideration, and what I would call this stranded capital, is that many companies are global. And they happen to be headquartered in the United States, but they're competing globally. So we can only go so far in terms of patriotism and bringing money back to the United States. There has to be an economic reason to do so, to be able to make it sustainable. And that's a fact. And we've got to deal with that. So by paying an additional tax, though, it's a disincentive to invest in the United States. It is an incentive for us to invest in Britain or Nantung or Warsaw or somewhere else, because you just don't want to let that capital sit idle. You want to do something with it. Either bring it back, pay it out to your shareholders in the form of dividend, and they'll pay a 15% tax on that, or put it to work. It doesn't really do anybody any good for Apple to have $45 billion stranded outside of the United States.
Outside the
If
United
they're not going to
States.
use it.
Yep.
No, I agree.
I mean, it can be tied to the investment, maybe. Like, say, there can be some kind of a scaling can be done, a scale can be put in front that, okay, if this is an investment, you make it, this is what is the rebate you get, or something like that, which becomes more lucrative for outside money to come inside the country for expansion and creating more jobs.
Capital goes to where it's appreciated
Sure.
and protected.
And it runs from
And
where
it,
it's.
and it runs, just
Yeah.
like water.
Yeah.
And we better do a better job of appreciating this capital and get it back in our country.
I totally agree with that. We've got probably a few more minutes here. On the trade, real quickly on the trade, then I want to talk, I want to give some thoughts on a couple of regulations, and then maybe hear what your planned merger will do for Arkansas in terms of jobs and technology. But what your thoughts on the trade bills that we passed?
The trade bills that you passed, I want to say thank you. Congratulations on that. In reference to the trade bill that was passed on the 12th of October, that was for Panama, Colombia, and South Korea. So that was great. However, how long have those bills been up there? How long have we talked about that trade?
Yeah.
4 years.
06, 07.
Right? It took over 4 years to get those to pass.
Yep.
And
Unbelievable.
What folks don't realize is that allows us to play on a competitive field as well in the world marketplace. As I said, Caterpillar exports over $15 billion outside the United States, and that's critical to us. So when you look at it, I don't know how many folks have seen this cute little commercial out there. I'm not a big TV watcher, but I did catch one the other day where Little Susie's lemonade stand. So here's this little girl in her neighborhood, and she's selling lemonade. Dad flips her some sort of a nice, probably an iPhone, right? Flips her an iPhone, tells her to go to town. Well, she's selling lemonade in her little neighborhood, and then she decides, you know what? Now with this technology, I can take this elsewhere. And she goes all over the neighborhood, and she goes outside the city there, and she's selling, making big money. That is what we have at Caterpillar today. We're going on the offense. We're playing 5% of the world's population is here in the United States. 95% of the market is outside the United States. So that's critical for us in the global marketplace and that free trade. When we have free trade agreements in place, that just drives business. It drives investment here in the United States so that we can produce machines to send around the world. So I really feel the free trade agreement is a great win for us, and we're looking forward to more in the future.
I think that there's a critical improvement that's needed as we learn a lesson from these three. And the lesson is that we can't allow those to be partisan pawns, not for the sake of partisanship, but for the real economic impact that comes from that.
Yep.
And these three agreements were used.
For the TAA.
Yeah, which we've benefited from, by the way.
Yep.
But the point is that Europe has free trade agreements as well. In a lot of cases, they were in markets 6 months or more
Yep.
before us. That means that they have gone in and locked up the markets. They have locked up the opportunities prior to that. So we need to move faster. And I know that is in line with your desires, but we do need to, as a nation, move faster toward those free trade agreements. The world is shrinking, and we
Yep.
need to be a part of it.
There's another thing that I'd like for us to put on the table while we're talking about the importance of trade, and that is currency valuations. Because there are certain countries that I am convinced are using their currency valuation as a weapon against. It's a strategic asset of theirs that is being used against the United States of America. And we've got to get serious about that. And we've got to use all the tools at our disposal to try to move, in particular China, forward on letting their currency float to a more realistic level. I think that's critical. I think it's critical for the manufacturing base in our country. And we've got a lot of tools, and I think that we should use them.
I agree, and with a lot of the comments that have been said here, and I think this panel more than any of the other panels really has reminded us of how global, not just business in America is, but business in Little Rock is, and often we maybe don't think about that. Real quickly, I wanted to. Jerry, I wanted to get your thoughts. We've talked a lot about regulations and how they hamper your ability to do what you do. And in particular, we've talked about the gainful employment rule. I don't know if that's been made an impact with anyone else, but do you want to speak to that?
Sure. Yeah, I guess that's my issue. Most of what you've all been talking about is not really relevant to Remington College, relevant to me as a citizen possibly, but yeah, regulatory burden and uncertainty are the new buzzwords but for us specifically, when we particularly were a for-profit institution rather than a not-for-profit, We were actually forced this year as a result of that, of the regulation, to raise our tuition. Not encouraged, not discouraged to raise it. We were forced to raise it. We were prevented this year from hiring 50 people to start new programs, not discouraged by regulation like Fair Wage Act or anything. We were prevented from hiring 50 people because of regulation, and it's a long story why, and a lot of arcane details that we don't really need to go into, but for the for-profit sector, luckily we are figured out a way to escape that. But
Can you explain the core of that rule?
of the gainful employment rule, well, it measures a student's ability to pay for the debt they incur by the job that they get, and that's a very admirable relationship to make and to create, but the devil, of course, is in the details. It just doesn't work and will not work for in the effect of the regulation and the burden of proving it out, both on the Department of Education and on the institutions themselves, is going to be, incredible. And it at least encourages students to reduce institutions, for-profit institutions primarily, but some community colleges and there's some programs there to reduce their tuition. That's the incentive that it creates. But another regulation for-profits forces them, and did us this year, to raise our tuition, which is called 90/10. So the two, in 2014, when this regulation comes about, it will basically produce a mutually exclusive situation for institutions in their pricing of the tuition that many of them will not be able to make, and you'll see a lot of, if it doesn't change, you'll see a lot of closures of for-profit institutions.
Those are conflicting regs from the same agency?
Department of Ed, yeah.
Right.
And 90/10 is a statute, gainful employment is just a regulation.
Congressman, if I could add on to what Jerry's talking about, and I'll put my state chamber hat on here for just a minute and address some of this, because you and I have had this conversation before, but you could get a group of, and I'm sure you've heard it in other panels today, but you could get a group of any type of business or education, banking, any kind of entity together right now, home builders, and the common complaint that I think fuels a lot of this uncertainty, that still exists out there, why people are unwilling to invest and hire people right now, are the regulations that are just kind of swallowing everybody up and having to work through all those, whether it's OSHA or EPA, the banking rules that are still so uncertain. There are just so many huge issues out there that are pending. Some rules that are yet to be decided, based on some of the legislation that's been passed in the last 2 years. But that's what I hear from a lot of businesses around the state, that they're fearful. They don't know what they're going to be getting into, and that I think is something that you hear all over the country, but certainly something that I hear from businesses and all kinds of entities across our state.
I would say that is the theme that I've heard most today. I was asked by a reporter about an hour ago what I thought the theme was, and I said regulatory uncertainty is probably what I've heard most today. And it's not people opposing regulations. They've been living under regulations ever since they were born, and ever since they've had a business. But there has been a drastic increase in the burden in many sectors over the last several years, and I hear that from all parts of the economy. And so, Michael, are there any regulations or any barriers that you're facing in what you do that makes it harder to do?
Well, just as a setting, I'm with UAMS BioVentures, so we sort of capture the research value coming out of the institution as UALR CTR does and try and turn those into commercial opportunities. I deal predominantly in the life sciences, and I think it doesn't take long for anyone to realize that anything that is going to be taken from the research bench into patients requires basically FDA approval, and that is an incredible regulatory hurdle, which places a lot of uncertainty on the commercialization of that product. I think from at least the life science development component, which is a very, very small part of what this panel is addressing today, the FDA has always been there. They, I think, continue to be there, and I think there is a little bit more of a willingness now of the FDA to actually work with those that are involved in our industry. Certainly we are in a good position here in Arkansas to have a good relationship with the FDA commissioner. NCTR and programs that we have initiated through the FDA commissioner have really helped us maybe lower a little bit some of the barriers that we have to address from the FDA perspective. But overall, I would say that the primary barriers for us are just essentially finding that investment community that has some comfort level in investing. We deal on the bleeding edge of technology, and it requires people that are willing to take risk, and anything to lower those barriers to that risk are going to be appreciated in the industry.
And so limited access to credit, uncertainty in the market overall certainly impacts your ability to get the investors that you need, it sounds like.
Ultimately, yeah.
Well, before we close, I just want to give Eddie, if you want to say a couple things about what your potential merger with T-Mobile is going to do, not so much nationally, but here in Arkansas, if that, when that comes together.
I will. Thank you, Congressman. And it is a national issue, more than just an Arkansas issue. I kind of was laughing when Paul mentioned his comment about pitching the phone. I wish that was our commercial because it's a good one.
About that.
That's all right. But it's certainly relevant because that's what we're seeing so much of, across the country is what's driving productivity and driving so much efficiency across our country and the globe is mobile data. And, we could have been on an infrastructure panel, we could have been on any number of panels today and talk about the need for the capacity to handle this traffic that we already see and we're going to see more of. The data traffic in the last 4 years has increased 7,000% on our network, and it's similar types of increases on everybody's network. 35% of the people in Arkansas have a wireless-only device. So when we talk about even getting people to apply for jobs, most of us now, are only taking applications online. So that in and of itself is an issue. Just when you want to just boil it down to employment. But there's so many applications. 4 years ago, we didn't even know what an app was. Now there are 1 million of them and 100,000 of them a day probably being created, and more of them are going to have their applications that really are going to be beneficial. We're not talking about Angry Birds anymore. We're talking about applications for business that can drive efficiency in manufacturing. It can drive efficiency in agriculture, education, any number of economic development issues. And the real shortage that we've got from an infrastructure standpoint, we can build more towers, feed fiber to them, but what we've really got in this country is a shortage in spectrum, which are the airways that carry the last few hundred feet of this mobile data explosion that we're seeing. And there's too much spectrum in the hands of entities that are not doing anything with it, either don't have the capital to develop it or holding it as a commodity, kind of trading it as a commodity. So this T-Mobile acquisition that AT&T is pursuing, T-Mobile is a German company that is admitted they're not going to invest anymore in the United States, but they have a lot of spectrum for LTE 4G deployment, which is the next generation of mobile data that's 10 times faster than what we're seeing now with 3G speeds. In Arkansas's case, if that came through, they have less than 1% market share, but they've got spectrum in all 75 counties. So we could literally cover the state with that added spectrum. 97% of the population would be covered with 4G LTE coverage if we had access to that 4G spectrum. The numbers are just as dramatic across the country, but it especially is, I think, dramatic in a state like ours. And so that's the reason for it and why I think it's so important, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity
Sure.
to mention it.
I will tell you, I got a stack of letters at my office urging me to support the merger. Governor Beebe and almost every legislator and mayors and everybody else. So you got a lot of support, or did a real good job mobilizing that support. But anyway, thank y'all to everyone. We are out of time. I know we're a little bit over, so we'll take about 10 minutes and then we'll get the last panel going. Thank y'all.
Thank you.